Did the Texans draft that we've praised almost nearly not happen? And did a mystery we've been discussing finally get solved? And what does it all mean for Nick Caserio? Let's go inside the locker room.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the locker room on YouTube. You know what it is. Let's get it. Hey. Locker room. Yeah, we in the locker room. Texas talk. Yeah, you know what we about to do. Localize every angle's what we really do. We the source. We the pulse of the city too. Landlocked. Got the game in the headlock. Localize every time. Can't stop. Won't stop.
Mystery solved on the weekend, or were they? Or are more questions created? It is the locker room, number one source for Texans digital content. Appreciate y'all for coming through. So we've been talking about this for a while, the draft class and the reports, the video evidence, and everything of Nick Caserio. And if you don't remember, let's just briefly catch up on this. The Texans were kind of caught in the act because of those damn cameras that teams have on draft day, and because Caserio basically said as much. The general manager of the Texans, Nick Caserio, said as much. They were caught making an offer to the New England Patriots for a draft day trade to move up and select someone. Now, we've kind of speculated and we've kind of wondered what were the Texans trying to get with that 38th pick. A few selections after they'd already selected Jaden Higgins. And I'm not going to play the video. We've already been through this drill. New England has copyright stuff pretty strong. But the Texans, in order to move up to 38, they were offering 58th overall selection, the 79th overall selection, and a third-round pick in next year's draft. And New England said no. And immediately we saw the video. We heard Nick Caserio say that the Texans had actually tried to make moves. We wondered and we speculated, okay, did they want a running back? Could they have wanted to trade up and get Ersery, who they ended up selecting 48th overall? So they ended up trading up from 58 to 48. What exactly did the Texans want with that pick? And Jonathan Alexander of the Houston Chronicle has a report now that apparently they wanted to trade up and get someone that they ended up getting 10 spots later than that. They ended up trading up for, but they didn't have to trade that much of a haul. Aireontae Ersery. This is from Jonathan Alexander of the Houston Chronicle. Quote, the Texans liked Ersery so much that they initially tried to trade up 20 spots in the second round to get him. So according to Alexander, it wasn't a running back, and it was actually Aireontae Ersery that the Texans were trying to trade up for. Now, here's a couple of things about this. And some may ask, well, why does this matter? What does it matter? Well, there's a couple of things. Because first of all, it kind of shows that if this is true, the nerd imaginary alternate universe makes Caserio look bad. And there are a lot of draft nerds who think that Nick Caserio, usually when he trades up, he either gives up value that is not appropriate for what he trades up and gets. And a lot of times he trades up for guys that many people assume would have been there later in the draft. Now, usually we don't have proof. We don't have the alternate universe that I speak of, where I say, I wish I could just go back and see if Juice Scruggs would have been there had they not traded up for him. Or I wish I could see if both USC guys that they took this year would have been there had they not traded up for him. In this situation, if it's true, and I'm going to emphasize why I'm saying if a little bit later, but if this is true, this kind of shows that perhaps Nick Caserio doesn't have a grasp of what value is and when these guys are going to go. And why does this matter? I think it matters because if you look at this draft, and this is based on what we've said and what we've spoken of, if this trade right here that we just showed, if this goes down, then you don't have Jalen Null because you're trading 79 overall. You still have Ersery, but you got him anyways. And you maybe don't have Woody Marks, depending on when he was going to go, because you ended up trading that 2026 third-round pick and got Woody Marks. So let's just pretend that the Texans were really trying to trade up and get Aireontae Ersery, and let's pretend that the Patriots accept this, okay? The Texans end up with Aireontae Ersery. There's no Jalen Null, and there's no Woody Marks. What are we saying about the Texans draft if this trade goes down? Now, what we might be saying is, well, at least they got Aireontae Ersery. And if he ends up being good, maybe this is kind of forgotten. But they ended up getting him anyways. And on top of that, they ended up getting Jalen Null, who I think he's one of the best weapons that CJ Stroud has out of the slot. I think that was a hell of a luxury pick. And I feel like they needed a running back and they got Woody Marks. So if this is true, and I'm emphasizing the if, because I also wonder if this is a keeping it real goes wrong thing from Alexander's sources. But if they make this trade, there is no Null, and we don't know what happens with Woody Marks. And the other reason it matters is because the process over results that Nick Caserio used to speak about, I just wonder, like, if the process matters anymore or if it's just based on results. Because either way you look at it, the results ended up being better because he didn't make that trade. The process is kind of effed up if you look at it. And that's the reality of it is we have it. And a lot of times when these trades are or aren't made, and this is why this is different. And shout out to everyone in the chat. It is the locker room. The reason why this is different is because the alternate is already proven as worse. Because you ended up getting the guy that you were trying to trade up for. There's no measuring this trade. Like the Will Anderson trade, there's some people who say they gave up too much. There's some people who say they gave up the appropriate value. This debate could go on forever, and there can be like some hidden meaning. But when you try to trade up 20 spots, you give up a draft pick where you ended up getting a pick that was widely praised around the league, the Jalen Null trade. And more importantly, right here in the locker room and on SNL with myself and Cody Stutes. And you have an extra pick that you use to get a running back that it seems like people are excited for. It shows that you tried to make a bad trade. And you misevaluated where the player was going to be and what you needed to do. So there's no results of this that looks better because you have a slot receiver that you get to look at and see what he turns into in the next 4 years. And you also have a running back who you think is going to contribute this year. So immediately this trade looks stupid based on the results. If Alexander's sources are correct and the Texans were really trying to draft Aireontae Ersery, there's no, we'll see how it plays out. No, we get the alternate universe that we always speak of. We get to see, and we saw it. And fortunately, it didn't go down. So there's that. Now, the other part of this is you also wonder, why in the hell was Nick Caserio so upset on that night? And I think it's interesting to revisit this because this is something else that we've been talking about. These aren't new storylines. This is an ongoing channel. This is an ongoing stream where we try to build on things from night to night and give you the pulse of what's going on with the Texans. And we immediately said Nick Caserio needs sleep. I said it to Texans PR. I said, dude, this guy needs sleep. He needs sleep. He looks grumpy. Why is he so pissed? He's making an ass of himself. He's making a fool of himself. And I thought he did. And the funniest thing is, the pushback on that was, well, look at what he ended up doing in the draft. Yeah, look what he ended up doing. But again, if this is true, look what he tried to do. Like it's funny because it worked out well, but it's also kind of troubling. And I go back to what I accepted from Nick Caserio when he was first the Texans general manager. And this was on the flagship station. And this is the same guy who I would criticize O'Brien. I would criticize Easterby at a high level. But I was always fair when it was appropriate with both of those guys. It wasn't very much appropriate with Jack Easterby. He's a POS. But when Nick Caserio, when he first got here in 2020, in the offseason after 2020, Nick Caserio said process over results. And you've heard me say that a number of times. This channel started that year, 2020, the year before Lovie Smith. We started, and that was when it was process over results, and we talked about it a lot. And I thought it was appropriate. Process over results. I get it. You have all this dead cap. You're trying to stockpile picks. Got to figure something out. Process over results. The process of getting there matters more than the results. There's a lot of variables that can happen to where results, like a win here, a win there, like process over results. You've got to balance it out. You've got to be able to check it out. Process over results. My question is this when it comes to Nick Caserio. Does that still exist? Because if so, this process was effed up. This process was effed up. You got the guy that you were reportedly trying to trade up for 10 spots. You got him 10 spots later, and you were able to add one of the steals of the draft in Jalen Null, probably arguably the best pick they made, honestly. And that's something that we've been saying in here the whole time. Like, if you like Jalen Null, you should at least raise your eyebrows that Nick Caserio tried to trade up for someone they ended up getting anyways, if this report is true, and they wouldn't have gotten Null. If you're someone who likes Woody Marks and you like the fact that they were able to trade up with this pick that he offered, then you should kind of raise your eyebrows. Now, if the trade goes down, we never know this, but we have the benefit because of the video with the Patriots and because of the report from Alexander, we have the benefit of knowing that it almost went down. So that's the crazy thing. So I get that sometimes you get lucky in this business, and I get sometimes luck goes your way, and that's great. But in an era where I was willing to accept process over results for Nick Caserio when it favored him and when it was to his benefit, and when a lot of people were kind of questioning it, and some of you people, I do mean you people, you know who you are, we're questioning when a GM goes up there and says process over result. What do you mean it's not about winning? What do you mean it's not about the process over the results? It's all about winning. It's all about the dubs. But if I'm to accept, and this is in the moment, if I'm to accept, and I don't accept everything from Caserio, but if I'm to accept that process over results can be a thing when it benefits him, then where are we at here when it comes to that notion? I'm going to ask him. And that's the luxury we have here. I'm going to ask him. We don't have to get too like specific into the draft and stuff, because I don't know what he is and isn't going to say about that. But I just want to ask him, like, what are we still in the process over results phase? Like, how does that work? When does that work? When is it just about results, process, all that type of stuff? Because it is a bottom line business. But this isn't a mystery anymore. As soon as Alexander makes this report, and this is something we've been talking about, it tells you that Nick Caserio literally tried to trade away the best draft pick that the Texans made and a draft pick that they used to trade up for Woody Marks. Now, if you're just going to defend that and say it's okay, that's fine. But credibility is kind of important. And I think I think it's important for fans in this chat. And I think it's important it's for damn sure important anytime this microphone comes on that there's got to be some fluidity. It doesn't mean you're always going to be right, but Nick Caserio always uses the word fluidity. If you like the Null pick and you like the Marks pick, the result, okay. So you're just all results, no process, okay. But did you believe in process over results when Nick Caserio told it to you? Maybe you'll just do whatever Caserio tells you to do. I'm just a little bit, I'm a little bit amused, but relieved because I want the Texans to do well. It's good for this channel. It's good for the city. You want to cover a good team. I'm glad it worked out the way it did, but if this report is true, it worked out the way it did despite what Nick Caserio tried to do. In the big scheme of things, that might not matter, but if this report is true, the draft that is so highly regarded, and two of the players that I hear about most, Null and Marks, Null for sure here, and Ersery, by the way, because you ended up getting him anyways. This draft worked out despite what Nick Caserio tried to do, according to Jonathan Alexander. That's the reality of the situation. And that's what that is. Brandon on the chat says Ersery was originally projected to go in that 40 range. Having him fall back to 48 and still get Null was a great deal. I agree 100%. It was obviously a great deal. And they were able to get that. I don't know, like in the 40 range, what does that mean? Caserio should have a better grasp of it than you or I. The point is, they were able to get that and more despite the trade. A27, what do you mean, you people? I mean the people in the chat. Dylan asks a question. If Ersery, Woody, and Null all hit, how does that reflect on Caserio? That means it's great. I mean, he looks great. He's the one who made the pick. We'll look back and we'll probably forget this. We've just been in the moment. You know, it's not like we saw the report from Jonathan Alexander and then decide, oh, we got to talk about this. We've been talking about it from the very beginning. It's a fluid show. It's a fluid situation. We've been talking about this. But if they all hit, it's not going to matter. The result is what's going to matter in the big scheme of things. But the process has to be smooth and it has to figure out. And it makes you wonder, you know, Juice Scruggs, you traded up for Juice Scruggs. Was Juice Scruggs, did you misevaluate that? Did you are you misevaluating assets? Are you reckless with mindsets? That's the question. Nick Caserio doesn't need to be fired. That's a little bit dramatic. And it was so nice. Jim said it twice. No, let's not fire him. I mean, that's a little bit dramatic. I don't know if you're being overly sensitive or what, but yeah, that's not really what we're trying to do with Caserio at all, to fire him. But I mean, the process does matter. Engineer says, to be honest, Landry, I don't listen to anything Nick says because he ain't trying to give us any insider information, LOL. Which is kind of another angle of this. Another angle of this Caserio thing as well. Jim, you're too sensitive. You need to go in timeout, bud. No one thinks that he's a bad GM. This is the water carrying type of stuff. Sean on the chat says, from the two scenarios, we know that Nick was at least 10 spots off in his eval. How many spots off would have made you feel better? I mean, it's not really about the spots. It's just about it's about how close he could have been to a missed opportunity in the draft that we praised. And here's the way that I would ask it. How much different would the draft have looked if you didn't have Null and you didn't have Marks? In other words, I think you would feel okay with Ersery and Higgins. I think that's a solid traditional draft. But the home run draft that they had with getting Null and I guess adding the running back Marks, I think that obviously doesn't happen if this goes down. So that's the real thing. Now, here's the other question I have about this. is, and again, this isn't a question of reporting, but are we sure that they were really trying to trade up for Ersery? Or is that just what they're saying after the fact? Because it would look good had they not failed to make this trade, because we never would have known that Null was a possibility unless we really did some digging. And we also wouldn't have known whether or not they would have got Marks or not. So we wouldn't have really known what would have happened. And they could just say, well, we really wanted Ersery, so we went up there and got our guy. That would be the sales pitch. And after the fact, that would sound cool. But we know the specifics of what you were offering, so we can take Null off of this hypothetical first round or second round steal list, whatever, third round, whatever, whenever Null went, 79. And we know that now with Caserio. But the question I have is that really what happened? Because Nick Caserio, after the draft, was pretty damn open. And he was pretty damn candid at a crazy level. And we kind of talked about it, how open and how candid Nick Caserio was when the draft concluded, to the point where he talked about someone standing up for the Jalen Smith pick. He talked about trying to trade up. I just don't see why he wouldn't say that they tried to trade up for Ersery. So could this be some keeping it real goes wrong, where the Texans, on one hand, the source is trying to say we really, really wanted Ersery, but they're not factoring in that in the crazy world that we live in, we have video proof of what the trade was going to be, courtesy of the New England Patriots. And we also have a player that everyone's excited about that you got as a result of not making that trade, too, if you count Marks, that we can look at. So let's just go back and listen to what Caserio said, and let's try to make some sense of what Caserio was talking about.
So
this is right after.
All right. Appreciate everybody sticking around.
This is right after he reportedly tried to trade up for Ersery, ended up with Ersery and extra and Null, despite his trade. And it felt like he needed some extra sleep. But let's just watch this press conference now with that in mind, knowing what we know now.
Kind of getting into the players, just can't say enough about the work and the effort of the scouting staff and the coaching staff, like, to arrive at this point. There's so much discussion, there's so much dialogue that takes place from March through April, during the draft, in the draft room. And, honestly, it's such a collaborative effort. The work that they put in, pro staff, understanding their teams, understanding like where players potentially could fit, where is there a gap, where is there a player that could potentially be of conflict for us, where we might have to move and get in front of. And the college scouting staff, like, they know the players better than anybody.
So he's saying move in front of it. So maybe they were trying to get in front of the Bears. That would make sense, which was the pick before New England. Chicago ended up taking an offensive lineman that wasn't Ersery. So maybe that's what he thought. And then we have the college scouts.
They've been studying these players for as long as anybody. And, I think the last pick was a good example of just talking through it and, not being afraid to speak up and say, hey, what about, so-and-so? It just speaks to like the team nature of the building, how we operate, what we do. And then you see that on display and it kind of comes to fruition all at once, when there's so much that goes into the actual execution of the pick. But the work that goes in, I really can't say enough about the people that are involved in that process. As it pertains to the players that we picked, let's say it really speaks to people and programs as much as anything, which is important. I have a tremendous amount of respect and admiration for Coach Campbell, the way he runs his program, the types of people that he brings in, the way he develops players. I would say Coach Fleck is the same way at Minnesota. And these players have been coached, they've been trained, they've been developed. Now they kind of have to restart that here a little bit in those specific examples. But when you pick players, it's as much about their belief in those players. And some of them understand kind of the program that we're building and what D'Amico and I expect from the players and the fit, and they'll be honest, not afraid to say, you know what, he might not be for you, and here's the reasons why, and you can't, help but respect that information and that communication, because it makes a difference. As far as the picks are concerned, I mean, I know we moved around a bunch a little bit there. I don't know, 5 trays, whatever it was, but, kind of stuck in picked Higgins there, moved up to get Aireontae, stuck and picked Jalen, and then
so moved up to get Aireontae, obviously not to the New England pick.
Kind of moved a little bit with the other Jalen. I know we got Jalen's and we got all these guys around. I mean, it's going to be hard to keep them straight. But, I mean, we feel we've added youth, toughness, speed, athleticism, overall competitiveness on both sides of the football. And hopefully that just enhances the overall performance of our football team. I think practice is going to be a lot of fun. I mean, there's going to be a lot of talking back and forth, whether it's Jalen Smith. I mean, I know we'll talk about CJ, GJ there. He'll be involved in some of that. But these guys are going to want to compete, and it's only going to make each other better. I mean, we're not even talking about Kamari Lassiter, who's competitive as any player probably have in the building. So the idea was to try to add good players that are good people, that are young, that are tough, that are hungry, that want to win, that put the team first. And I think these picks sort of exemplify that. So, I'm not necessarily going to go through a breakdown of each individual pick. I'm sure I'll get some questions about some of the players, but we'll kind of go from there.
Hey, can you talk a little bit about having a guy already having a player from, say, Iowa State, and you talk about the coach and what the coach does someplace.
Teammates embrace players on there, full of unsolicited, literally one of the best 30-man visits. This is after the draft, that they had. So he's just pours confidence with us. I mean, I've said that we need good football players.
Player available, but when the two kind of align.
All right, this is where he gets a little bit testy, but you heard him say that there was a disagreement. So maybe the Smith was the disagreement or whatever. Maybe that's
fine. Is that the dream scenario for trying to build the team that you want?
Yeah, we've never talked what do we need? I mean, I've said that we need good football players. It doesn't matter the position that they play. So get them in the building and sort it out. We need good football players. That's what we need. The whole perception of you need this position, you need that position. I mean, that's made up. We don't approach it that way. So it doesn't really matter. And I'd say today was another good example of follow the grades. I'd say we kept coming back to, well, here were our grades on this player. Okay, well, all right. Well, if he's the best player and he has the other qualities that we covet, then we pick the player. And the competition is going to sort itself out. We're not going to control the competition. The players are. So, can we draft another receiver? I don't know. Sure. If he's the best player and he's graded accordingly. So it doesn't matter where they come from. So D'Amico said it. I've said it. This whole concept of drafting for need, honest to God, I don't even know what it means. I mean, what does it mean? If someone could tell me that, I'd love to hear it. But we don't look at it that way. Okay. We need to keep drafting good people, good football players that are going to enhance the overall culture of our building. And we're not going to stray from that.
I think when it comes to Ersery and some of the performances,
and they're not on the tape. We going to put in the other games in the.
Seeing him in Senior Bowl, was there anything that stood out in particular or during the pre-draft process that you really liked?
Yeah, pretty much everything. Watch him play. I mean, here's a guy who's basically made himself into an NFL football player.
That stood out in particular.
Player on the board. I mean, what else is there?
Did you your first pick of the second round? Well, why ultimately was Jaden Higgins the right guy for you guys?
Because he was the best player and the highest graded player on the board at the time. I mean, what else is there?
Did you have any seeing him in Senior Bowl? Was there anything that stood out in particular or during the pre-draft process that you really liked?
Yeah, pretty much everything. Watch him play. I mean, here's a guy who's basically made himself into an NFL football player. Under-recruited basketball player in high school, went to Eastern Kentucky. Not too many people from Eastern Kentucky to make it in the NFL. Wanted an opportunity to go somewhere because Eastern Kentucky there's better programs. So wasn't afraid of the challenge. Went to Iowa State. Very productive player. I mean, go watch him play. And he went down to Senior Bowl and he had a good week. So why do we pick him?
Dang, you cussing, Nick? He skipped it. He must have cussed.
What kind of goes through you guys' process to figure out who has the right mindset?
All right, there you go. So I don't know what to make of the whole press conference after either. Like when you go back, it doesn't make much sense. But what we know and why it matters, and some people may say it doesn't matter, it's all about the result. That's true. Based on what you have on the roster now, but they had a good draft despite what Nick Caserio tried to do. And I always use gambling analogies because, quite frankly, a lot of times when we watch Nick Caserio in the draft, it feels like a guy that is just wheeling and dealing. And maybe this is like when you're at the roulette table. And apologies to people who don't gamble, but you're at the roulette table and you look back at your buddy and you say, okay, I'm going to put $300 on black. Reds hit 4 times in a row. I'm going to put $300 on black. I really believe in this. And then all of a sudden, the wheel spins and the dealer puts their hand over and says, no more bets. So that $300 bet you were going to make, it's lost. And for a brief second, you feel like you just lost $300 as you sit there with those $300 chips in your hand. Then as the wheel spins, you look up, boom, it's red. Boom, it's red. So the Chicago Bears did not select Ersery. Now all of a sudden you're rolling your hands together. You're just wondering what's going on. And then finally you put the $300 on black and it hits and you get the $300 that you craved from the very beginning. And the money that you saved from not losing that $300 that you would have lost had you made the bet when you wanted to make the bet, you use it and you go get whatever the equivalent of a Jalen Null and a Woody Marks is in the casino. Sometimes it's just like that with Nick Caserio. It's gambling. And sometimes it's a mysterious, hypothetical, can't be proven type of discussion when we're talking about the way in which the Texans do things in the draft. Well, this guy would have been here when they selected. And in fairness to Nick Caserio, and I want to make this clear because I always am fair with Nick. In fairness to Caserio, I think in like the first and second round, like early second, it's not really a thing. Like in that case, like when he sticks and picks, I think he does an excellent job. The worst pick that he's ever made in that range has been Kenyon Green, and they actually traded back to make that pick. So between Stingley, CJ, Will Anderson, we won't talk about the chart, Kamari Lassiter, when he just sticks and picks, it's there. It's usually when you get in that late second, early third, and then all the way down where you start to wonder this. But now we kind of see it. But at the end of the day, I guess it's just whatever you end up with. It's just we never really have the benefit of this alternate universe and this imaginary scenario to see. So fortunately for Nick Caserio, and fortunately for the Texans, and fortunately for y'all, that trade was rejected, assuming that the Texans were really trying to trade up for Ersery at 38th overall. And now you get to watch Jalen Null in a Texans uniform, and you get to watch Marks. So that's why it matters, and it's been something that we've discussed about. So we will see what that looks like, and we will wonder why Nick Caserio was upset that day of the draft. I think it might have just been my original theory of sleep, and maybe that's what he needed. So, yeah, someone in the chat says Nick will place $301 bets instead. He doesn't even get the 15 in the middle. Don't know. But yeah, that's just kind of the way that Caserio, and it ended up well. It ended up well. And you also got to wonder, like, as we go, and we're getting way ahead of ourselves here, but I don't know, like, you got to wonder, like, what the scouts felt and what D'Amico felt about this situation, because if Null becomes a really good player, let's say Null is a really good player, and I think there's a chance he's going to be damn good. We did the video last week before I hit the lake. We did the video last week. I think Null is going to be a good counter to the problems on the offensive line. I think he's going to be a safety blanket for CJ Stroud, along with Christian Kirk. And I think he's going to be a good player. I have high hopes for Null. I think Null's going to be really, really good. Really, really good. I think he kind of got pigeonholed as only a slot guy in the Texans because they had that extra pick. They were able to not really worry about that. I think some teams passed on him because they thought, well, he's just a slot guy. You know what the Texans said? We'll take the slot guy, regardless of whether we got one or not. And they didn't give up that extra pick. So they got Null. But you do wonder, and maybe not everyone's petty and maybe they're better teammates, but like, what if Null and Marks end up being like the faces of this draft class early on? Like, what if we get to a point this season, next season, the season after, because this isn't a Null versus Ersery. This is an Ersery versus Ersery and Null discussion. But what if they were all on board, then it's just a sigh of relief with everyone. But what if like D'Amico was kind of like, man, that's a heavy price to trade up for this guy. Is he going to be there? Or what if the scouts were like, man, I really don't think Chicago's going to take him. We can figure this guy out. Like, if Noah goes out there and balls out, like, don't they kind of look at, assuming that there's a disagreement, don't you kind of look at the guy side-eye that wanted to make the deal that would have resulted in them not getting this guy? Maybe. That's way in the background, really. We don't have to worry about it. But I think Null's going to be good. Unfortunately for them, they didn't pull the trigger on that trade, and New England didn't allow them to do so, because that would have been a disaster. There's no like, it's not a matter of who would you rather have. Would you rather have Ersery or Null? It's, you were able to get both because that trade didn't go down. So there we go. The Caserio solved-ish mystery that creates more questions, at least around here. It is the off season though. So a lot of this stuff is, I mean, it's that time of the year where we have these types of discussions. I do think it's cool that we get to see the alternate universe of a failed Caserio trade and what it would have looked like. It would have been bad. And we don't often know that. If the trade would have gone down, we never would have known. But we do now. So that's awesome. The Texans are going to be back on the field this week. Me and Cody will be on the scene. Wednesday is going to be the first media availability. We'll hear from D'Amico Ryans and some players. Not sure which players. I'm assuming they're just going to send some vets, but you never know. Typically, it's like they just send the faces. So we'll check that out on Wednesday, and then Friday, Nick Caley is going to talk. So we'll hear from the offensive coordinator, little Nick action. We've only heard from him once. Nick. He probably just, I mean, now the difference between Nick Caley, hearing him now and hearing him the first time, is we'll actually hear how he feels about his roster. They had Kirk at the time. But between the draft and some of the other stuff they've done, there's a little bit more of a grasp of what he has, what he can work with. His energy gets praised. I could kind of feel it a little bit. But he probably has a little bit better vision. So we'll hear that. And then we're going to have some days in early June. So we'll be down for that. And we'll let y'all know what goes on with that. And there's really not going to be any hints when it comes to the what the offense is going to look like. They'll just be out there. They'll just do some drills. So, but I was impressed with how the with how the Rooks looked, at least just running around. Maybe I'm just really thirsty for football. Well, there we go. Hope everyone had a good Memorial. Appreciate everyone for rolling through. Be sure to subscribe. Be sure to like. Be sure to ride along. And be sure to always remember when it comes to this Texan stuff, we're all in it together. Appreciate y'all for coming through.
Can't stop, won't stop. Yeah, we top 2 and we not too. Plugged in daily digital on YouTube. We got taste for days. Opinions to get.